So I'm on the BJJ Fanatics website, and I see 3 new videos by some guy named Thomas Radzinski. You familiar with that guy at all?
Nope, absolutely not.
No? Well, he's got some good stuff. Three brand new videos. They're getting amazing reviews, which is good to see as well. But you got to tell us about them real quick?
Yeah, I had, you guys already know, but I had opportunity to go to Boston, shoot 3 more instructionals, 1 on butterfly hook, complete guide for butterfly hook, 2 wrap, lapel, and submit them, and 3 we have taking the back. It's particularly designed for guys for over 40 because there's no climbing involved. All the back takes are on the ground. Very, very full and effective system. So dip into it. I'm really hoping that this is going to help your jiu-jitsu and really take it to the next level.
BJJfanatics.com. Just search ROZDZ. We have all had that situation where after class is when we want to ask a question. And Thomas, a lot of those questions you've already answered, right, at Ask a Black Belt.
Yeah, it's another podcast that I'm running. It's on podcast, all podcast platforms, plus on YouTube. You can find it anywhere. Just search for my name. Search for Ask a Black Belt. At this point, over 100 episodes, different questions, jiu-jitsu, life-related, but something that everybody comes across, and often these questions sink in our mind, but we don't ask for whatever reason. So if that benefits you, go there, listen. It actually might help your jiu-jitsu, might help your life as well. And if you have any questions, find me on Instagram and drop me a line. I'll be happy to answer your question and mention your name during the episode.
Welcome to Raw Radio.
And we are live.
Yo.
Once again. Good conversation.
Oh, great conversation.
We don't have a lot of judo guys. But this
There's
was
not a lot of judo guys. That's why.
well, that is true. That is true. At least like authentic. Well, I shouldn't say authentic. I'm gonna piss off a lot of people. But guys who really focus on judo.
Mhm.
Right? What was interesting about Shintaro was the fact that he really had a lot of experience in other martial arts.
Yeah, he's a
Wrestling,
double black belt.
right? Judo, jiu-jitsu, and then wrestling, sambo. There's a large diversity of the experience, but this is not what we both kind of really clicked on, right?
No, no, it was mostly my takeaway was, his father was from Japan, trained in a much different way than Shintaro did, and I think that the father-son relationship that he talked about, growing up in the States under his father's guidance in judo, that's what I took away from the most.
Yeah, it's really interesting how this fatherhood role or this father figure role impacts the little guys or the next generation. And both of us are fathers. We have kids. And, I feel like sometimes I do forget that everything we do really impacts them and in a positive and a negative way. I mean, it is what it is. But it really was, I really had a lot of reflection points, if you will, while he was talking about his childhood and his father really, in a very loving but tough way, enforced some of the old habits that he has brought in from Japan and from the old generation, if you will. And some of those differences between that culture and U.S. culture was becoming more visible as Shintaro was growing up and going through his life.
Yeah, I think the big changes, and hold on a second, I never hit record. I don't think it matters, right? We can use the Riverside audio, but
hopefully we can.
We'll find out. But so his dad kind of had two worlds, right? His dad had him living in two worlds, where it was the old world, the old school. He even went back to Japan during his high school years for training, and then in the new world of, when he didn't do well in a tournament, yeah, he was upset, but then he took him out for ice cream, or
Burger.
cheeseburgers afterwards. So there was that duality, that dichotomy there, and that to me is, I think as a parent, we all live in two worlds. Even though I was born and raised in the States, and my son is growing up, not that well. I shouldn't say not that different than
It
I
is
did, but it is different.
It is different.
Well, not only different because of the time and the era and how things have changed, but just because of the family dynamic that he's growing up in. But so I'll catch, I catch myself oftentimes being like, why are you being so hard on him? Or even catching myself before certain words come out of my mouth, like, no, this isn't going to be constructive. This isn't going to help him in any way, right? So on the fly, I'm adjusting the way I'm going to talk to him, how I'm going to get him to change his attitude and his perspective on things, rather than just scolding or tell him because I said so, or be a man or whatever. So I think we're all kind of living that balance, trying to find that balance to not do everything for them, not make them think that your favorite quote, everything is unicorn and rainbows. We want them to grow up having problem solving skills. That's my main thing, is like, I want him to be able to navigate the issues that come up on a daily basis without overreacting, so that he can learn and grow from things even at his young age. He just turned 9, so that it's not like shutting things off or shutting things out, but literally dealing with those things that come his way, so that he grows from it and that he learns from it, so that when a bigger event happens 3-4 years down the road, he's already got the tools and the coping skills to manage that situation already. And then when I'm gone, hopefully he's set up to do the same thing for his kids.
Well, ultimately, that's our job as a parent, right? It's to teach our kids to be independent and have the ability and skills to live the life, whatever that means.
Yeah, but I think, and we've changed over the years, I think, in how we do that.
Well,
right? From generation to generation.
Well, I think the interesting part is that, listen, if we asked our fathers, they probably they have done different things when we were growing up from what the grandfather was doing. I think these changes take place from generation to generation, right?
They do if you break some certain cycles. If you learn, that, if you're reflective, how did this really affect me, and why would I don't want to impose this or inflict this on my kids? I think
Well, oftentimes I think that's a very common, and listen, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but like, I feel like that conversation comes up very often with parents in general. Like, I don't want to do what my parents have done. I don't want to make the same mistakes.
Right.
And this evolution takes place where we change things, right? Now, the big question is, what have we learned and how much smarter can we be? And then, as our kids grow up and we are no longer around, what approach will they take for their own kids to set them for success, so this can kind of continue, so and that's the tricky thing, right? Because none of this is at least in my mind, none of this is cookie cutter, in a sense of that time evolves and we have to change. The change is unavoidable, at least in my opinion. What do you think?
What change are you talking
like
about?
In general, from generation to generation. What I'm saying is, 3 generations ago, life was very different than it is today.
For us, now there are guys out there that could be having a very similar conversation where it hasn't, where they are exactly like their fathers, who are exactly like their grandfathers.
You think so? That there are people out there who are so...
There, absolutely, because I think that we are.
But how can you explain that to me? How can you? So
my dad was right, and I'm not going to listen to anything else, and I'm going to do what my dad did because it got me where I am, and his father before him. There are people with that mentality.
Really? I mean, I suppose they are. I mean, I can't deny that they are. But
how many? I see.
It's just, but that's very narrow-minded mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a ton of people in this world that have a very narrow mind.
I suppose you're right. I mean, yes. I mean, yeah. I guess I'm trying to be optimistic about this. I'm trying to look at the bright side here. I'm trying to, glass half full here kind of guy, right here, So
because you're living it. You're doing it. I think you're trying to. You're conscious of the decisions and the choices that you make when it comes to your children. Some people are not. Some people go through life, whether you doing the exact same thing their parents did, or maybe even worse. Because they didn't learn. I learned from my mom's mistakes. I learned from her mistakes. Right? Some people don't. Some people don't even learn from their own mistakes.
Yeah.
And they pass that down to their kids. But on the other hand, some people look and are reflective and say, okay, maybe the old way isn't the best way. Maybe I flew off the handle because you lost that tournament, going back to the podcast. But you know what, dude? Shintaro even said that, by the end of the day, when things happened, they were pals again, right? And they worked things out. So,
you're right, because now you mentioned the tournament, and instantly I had flashbacks from a couple of the local tournaments when father is yelling at a child, you suck at this, what are you doing, what were you thinking, and like, this is not necessarily the language or the behavior that I would like to see in a parent, but I guess to each their own. I don't even know how to respond to some of that stuff when I see that. It's like we are supposed to have fun here, and this is not Olympics. Even if it was, I'm not sure if this would be acceptable reaction to.
Well, I've seen parents on the edge of the mat at the academy acting like it was a gold medal match.
Yeah, I know,
and even acting like it was a bigger than a gold medal at a tournament. Like talking about the attitude that their kid should have, like it was a death match. And it's just like, you roll your eyes, and it's like, obviously if sometimes you want to talk, you do talk to these people when you have a relationship with them. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes okay, this isn't going to last. Most of the people that I've seen like that, their kids don't do well here or in other places. So it's hard. It's ugly. And how you, I think, there's certain things where it's egregious, and you have to step in. But I think a lot of times you just think to yourself, well, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to treat my kid that way.
Well, it's hard. It's hard when you are in a witness role and things like that happen, because one, you don't want to step over the boundaries. This is not your place to correct anybody. At the same time, it's like, where's your brain? Like, come on, dude. This is not that serious. We're here to build this. We're not going to Olympics tomorrow. Like,
and how do you? There's so many different ways that people talk about how you build somebody too, and all that. But I know that crushing a kid emotionally isn't going to build them up.
It's not one of them.
Yeah, no. That's not the way. No, it's just not the way. So
well, and I think this kind of goes into that instant result kind of mentality and this entitlement of everything being delivered right now, versus understanding that some of these behaviors and skills, and especially in jiu-jitsu, really take a long time to deliver. How many times we find ourselves in a conversation with a parent when they expect a child to make a black and white conversion literally in 2-3 weeks, or very short period of time, versus we both know, and everybody who's listening has been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, that evolution, and as evolution takes place for within months, if not years. This is not something that you can achieve in a short period of time. You can gain individual skills, you can gain individual tools to deal with certain situations, but really the progression takes place for a very long time, which makes it a good thing for jiu-jitsu. But at the same time, that's what makes it complex. This is what makes it harder, right? Because it's that not motivation, that what's the word I'm looking for?
For
dedication.
That the gratification takes a while.
Yeah.
Right. To see the fruits of the labor.
Yes.
Where people don't want to wait.
No. Why would you?
Right. I've had the conversation with people in the past where it's like, hey, your child's behavior hasn't changed at school and at home, we only have them for 2 hours a week, right? You bring them, you don't bring them to every class. They're here twice a week for 2 hours. You need to help too. You need to put in the effort too, because just thinking that you're going to drop them off someplace like jiu-jitsu or football practice or anything, and that 2 hours are going to change the 10, 12 years of development that they already have, good or bad. I think that's a lot. That's a big ask.
Well, that's one. But oftentimes, I think if the child is here 2 or 3 times a week, every week, and it's consistent, that progress will come.
Yeah, it just
I think many times the child is not here every week,
right,
in every class, and the expectations are even higher. I feel at those situations where you see some of these guys or children appear in a class every other week for once a week, and the expectations are for the change to take place. And
sure.
I wish that more parents really saw the other side of this, how hard these kids work, how willing they are to open their mind and have fun and really adopt these new skills, and how phenomenal training partners they are, and how much they can love it if you give them the opportunity really to explore martial arts in general. This is not jiu-jitsu specific, but just martial arts in general. I think it's just phenomenal opportunity for those kids to grow. And many times we just, as parents, we don't give them those opportunities, and that is, I wish that changed overall as a community, as a generational thought, or change for everybody.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier about, like you see the dad on the mat screaming and yelling. You're not giving that kid an opportunity to grow from that loss, or that, that attempt at whatever they were doing and didn't come through. And why are you that upset to begin with? How many is it because you're embarrassed? Is it because you failed in some way?
Well, oftentimes,
it can be, right? We live through our children in a lot of ways.
So. We sure do. We sure do. I mean, listen, I if you're listening to this, if your son and daughter doesn't train jiu-jitsu, I encourage you to look into it. And if they do, allow them to have their own path. It's okay to keep them responsible. It's okay to keep them accountable, but allow them to have their own path and allow them to have fun, because truly jiu-jitsu without fun is a chore, and the moment is a chore. None of us want to do it. So
don't I know it? All right.
Leave
it there.
Let's wrap it up.
Peace.
Later.
Thank you for listening to Raw Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.